Tom Rice. I'm the proprietor of the Magnolia Grill. Peg and I opened up in 1996. I'm delighted to consider myself a veteran. I went in the United States Army in 1969. My career was almost 27 years. It was both active duty to start with, then in the reserves for a while, then back onto active duty with several deployments. My time in the military, I was trained to be a transportation movement specialist. In my almost 30 years in the military, never once did I do the thing they trained me to do. I retired as a first sergeant. There's some lessons that I took from working, before I went in the Army, and one was, keeping my mouth shut, and if you got time to lean, you've got time to clean. And that was directly from Vittorio Perri at Perri's Italian Restaurant. And I found, when you're just Joe Snuffy in the Army at Fort Benning and having a broom in your hand, sweeping the steps with the mud coming in all the time, and making sure the restrooms are tidy and all that sort of thing, not being averse to doing those menial things that have to be done, that everybody did. So I learned, from Perri's Restaurant that I always knew how to clean something a little better than it was. And that helped me early on in the military. Mr. Perri was big on being on time, being prepared to work. You didn't come in, to your duties, and then start to get ready. You were already ready when you got ready for your duties to start. And so I learned those things in the Army, and brought those into the Army with myself, and then were able to later, coming to formation wasn't just an idea that you just showed up when you wanted to. Formation was at 06. You were ready, standing in formation. You were ready, and so some of those lessons early on transitioned perfectly into later. My old man was a TAC officer at the Ranger camp, and he was big on don't be on the front row and open your big mouth and think you need to tell them you know everything. He says stand back and keep your mouth shut, and that's good advice. You walk in the front door of the Magnolia Grill and you look to where the cash register is and the front counter, you'll see a picture of Vittorio Perri. And Mr. Perri owned Perri's Italian Restaurant, 300 Eglin Parkway. He was a World War II veteran. While I was in junior high school, I went to their back door several times trying to sell ads for the school newspaper, and I got the gumption up one time, the guts up one time to ask for a job. And my first job was at Perri's Italian Restaurant, an iconic Italian restaurant for our community that was open for almost 50 years. And that was kind of my inspiration. All my life I enjoyed what I did there. And we've taken some of the best parts of what the fried food was like at the old Seagull restaurant that's long gone after the hurricane had burned down. The rib room was a rib place that had prime rib. There was Mr. Roger Clary had a place called the Rib Room at the old Howard Johnson's Hotel. Some of those flavors, and certainly Perri's Italian Restaurant where I started. So we're a steakhouse to some people, we're an Italian restaurant to some people, and we're a fried seafood, broiled seafood kind of restaurant to others. And that's made our mark in the community, is being something for everybody and selling a little history along the way. Well, welcome to the second floor of the Magnolia Grill. This was originally 2 bedrooms in the cottage, and we use it as private dining. So we've had the Chief of Staff of the Air Force here, we've had our former governor here, we've had our current Secretary of State has come here and had meetings here and had dinner. And so that makes a great place for private groups, but it also gives us an opportunity to display some of the things that people have given us, things that were in our family on both sides. We have silver collection, the Beale silver is here. A lot of the World War II memorabilia that we have given to us by veterans, things that veterans made, pieces that made, when we were building the Fisher House, we had fundraisers, and we had a couple of people that made us things from the World War II collection. And I have one piece to my left that was Mr. Reinley, Colonel Reinley, who flew missions over Berlin and made us a display. And his son's in business here in the community, and are very proud that his dad's things are here. And we're pleased to have people come up here. We have history tours. The Center for Lifelong Learning from the University of West Florida comes here about 3 times a year, and we do tours of the historic house and how it was constructed, but then about the interesting things that we've been able to collect. One of the things that I learned early on was my father-in-law, as family members would leave the dinner table, and the new son-in-law would be left with my father-in-law, and everybody in the family would get up and leave. And I sat with that gentleman. He was a World War II veteran, that if you don't own the dirt, you don't own anything. And so my advice to a lot of young startups, people that want to do some kind of business, it doesn't matter what it is, but having somewhere a goal to have your own piece of property, so that in good times and bad times, when the COVID pandemic came, the oil spill, the hurricanes, the oil spill was catastrophic, the pandemic, hurricanes, that sort of thing, to be able to have something to come back to that you own, rather than having all your effort put into building something like this in somebody else's backyard and somebody else's property. So that still rings in my ears. That's the first piece of advice I give, is figure out how you can do it. How can you own the property someday? But an advisor that I really respect, and his picture is here several places in the restaurant, was Dr. Dave Getch. Dr. Dave Getch was one of those people who advised me, did a lot of strategic planning for organizations, but was just, a great advisor on things. Said, your business needs to be like a hobby. It needs to be something you want to do, and sometimes people go into business, but they don't really want to be in business that well. But he said, make it a hobby. You got to love it, to put the effort in. And that's kind of our feeling. Somebody says, you spend all your time at the restaurant. I said, it's my hobby. It's a business, but it's my hobby. How do you survive in your business? You have to love what you're doing, and you have to, one of the goals, I think, people a lot of times when they start off on business, they want to take a salary out of it real quick, or they have misjudged, they buy a piece of property and they think people will just automatically show up on their doorstep. And we found that, you've got to love what you're going to do, and you have to be willing to beg, borrow, and steal, from your own family sometimes. Somebody's got to bring in the income, and sometimes it's not the business that you've gone into. It may take a lot longer than your plan. We're very proud to be part of a lot of organizations that have helped our community, our Chamber of Commerce, people like Dave Getch, who was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. Certainly the media, media has now changed, but when we opened, newspapers were still, very viable. That was a good way to get your word out, the radio stations. So much of that has changed now with its personal advertisement rather than things that you would buy, placing ads in this place and that place. We found that people would come to us from time to time and, would you support us by, in Christmas time, they would have breakfast with Santa, and it was a downtown event. The restaurant that they had planned to do the event at, with Santa Claus and the folks coming in, the place they were going to do it had to close. The owner just said, I can't do it anymore, and he closed the restaurant. And they came to me, and I said, well, I don't do breakfast, but I can certainly do pancakes. And so I asked them, where does the money go? And they said, well, we're going to give it to the folks at the chamber. And I said, well, I've got a better idea. We could give it to the Salvation Army. And we have a Salvation Army Corps here. It's been in our community since about 1968. And so we had a pancake breakfast welcoming Santa to the community for Salvation Army. And we've continued that. That's been almost 2 decades of doing pancake breakfast for the Salvation Army and their group on Christmas. Others came to us with the same thing, the junior ROTC at the high school. Could you help us out? We need to get new uniforms. We need to, whatever the need was. And if the group that was going to have the fundraiser, if they were willing to work it, wait the tables, scrub the dishes, help serve the coffee, that sort of thing, we were up to buying the pancake batter and buying the sausage and the orange juice and the coffee. And so that has turned out to be a wonderful way to connect with your community. Sometimes it's not what you have coming into the cash drawer, it's what you can give away to your community. And I won't say it buys you a lot of influence, but it certainly makes you feel really good. In 2014, the state of Florida established the Veterans Florida. Florida is for Veterans, Inc. It's a corporation, and they call it Veterans Florida. And it's easily accessible if you go online, and it pops up. And they do entrepreneurial. all sorts of entrepreneurial things, and way more detail, when they go into the accounting and the taxes and all the things that I knew nothing about when we first opened.